That was a good one. That was good. Right on the microphone.
Yes, the sound of a Diet Coke being opened.
So good.
The more that I get into all of these different like relay stuff and whatever else, the more I get into all these different podcasts with all our little hosts, the more I'm like, oh man, I should probably like follow a bunch of people on Twitter.
Yeah, but that would require opening the Twitter app.
That would require downloading the Twitter app.
Well, okay, I don't know if I have it, but like that would require going to twitter.com on a desktop PC.
Yes, I know.
And I don't know that I'm willing to make that sacrifice. Welcome to Pride and Accomplishment. My name is Jason.
And I'm Chris. This is episode 56. Jason, I've been watching your little profile picture in Discord these last couple weeks, and I've noticed a game next to it that I hadn't seen in a little while.
Yeah, it's weird. It's like not something we've talked about on the podcast in a long time. Well, I mean, I guess maybe a little bit, but like not in the way that it has just gripped me. I have been playing almost nonstop Guild Wars 2. Like every free moment I have, I'm just booting up Guild Wars 2, doing the dailies, doing all of this other stuff.
Yeah.
And it's taken me by storm.
Yeah, our Rocket League game is really suffering.
Well, it's the end of the season for Rocket League, and I quite honestly, I hit my 1,000 credits for the next season pass, and I'm just kind of done. Like, I'm not interested in any of the cosmetics that are at the end of the list. And, you know, that's where I am.
It's okay. New season starts in a week or two. We'll get back. So what is it about Guild Wars that has you sucked back in? Like, they haven't announced any like expansions. Well, they did announce an expansion, but they haven't released any expansions in the last month or so.
No, but they are doing like Guild Wars 2. The big joke about Guild Wars 2 is that they suck at marketing. They're just like the worst marketed game of all time. And I don't know that that's like totally true, but that's the joke like within the streaming and like player community that watches that kind of stuff. Because like their biggest promotion ever was like get free stuff when you buy a sub at Quiznos. And we're like, where the heck is a Quiznos? Like, how do you go? Like, it's just like, what a terrible marketing campaign. So they've started to really up their game in terms of marketing. Like they're now sponsoring streamers to like do actual like streams. They did a thing where they announced the expansion. They like sponsored streamers to like co-host the expansion, where the expansion announcement. Sorry. And a lot of games are doing this now where they're like, they do a live stream. The game itself does a live stream, but then they like pay streamers, you know, however many dollars to like essentially rebroadcast that live stream as they're doing it to give commentary. And it just adds to the hype, right? Like it adds to a bunch of people that are watching this, but they're watching their favorite streamer react to the thing that is already generating hype, and it generates more hype. And I'm kind of pulled in by that. So Guild Wars 2 did announce an expansion, and they are doing a very, very good job at taking advantage of the building hype that's coming from the expansion that's coming out, both out of game and in game.
The new expansion is called End of Dragons, I believe.
Yeah. It was very funny because it's called End of Dragons, but like during the live stream, they were like, let's be clear, it's called End of Dragons, not End of Guild Wars 2. Like this isn't the end of Guild Wars 2, which I thought was very funny.
I really wonder how long they will go in the Guild Wars 2 name before they kind of go to a Guild Wars 3. I guess it's probably a long time since they just said that they're not getting rid of Guild Wars 2.
Well, I find it really funny. Like, I feel like a lot, I don't know if it's just like, you know, confirmation bias or whatnot, but like, I feel like every time a game does really like they just stop at 2 all the time. The Division 2. I don't know if they're stopping, but like they're still putting money into the Division 2. Guild Wars 2. What's another big one that like stopped at 2?
Dota 2, Left 4 Dead 2, Half-Life 2.
Right. Like there's so many that just stop at 2. It's like they experimented with number 1 and then they came out with number 2 and they just keep that around forever. I have a feeling like Guild Wars is doing some major technology overhauls as well. Like they're moving all of their servers to AWS. They're investing in DirectX 11 for this next release. So they're like updating the current game to get there in terms of graphics and like behind the scenes infrastructure as well, which goes to show that, for me at least, that like the investment in like the tech debt tells me that they're not done with it.
Yeah, I guess really the Guild Wars 2 expansion next versus Guild Wars 3 is really only a semantic difference, since there's really not like a monthly fee. It's just you buy the expansion, and you would buy the base game anyway if it was a new base game coming out. So it probably doesn't really change the equation on the financial side. So they can just kind of keep evolving Guild Wars 2, I guess, forever.
Yeah, and I think they get away with even bigger sales, right? Because as they draw more I think their player base is actually growing, or reactivating, or however you want to call it, when you don't have to pay a monthly subscription. But they're doing a really nice job of like, hey, you can get this expansion if you already have the other ones, or you can buy all of them in a bundle, which it's just working out really nicely for some. It's the revenue thing is just working for them right now. Again, they're doing such a good job marketing and packaging and like making the new player experience and the hype building and the everything all together, all in a cohesive kind of idea and unit, which is just really, really weird for Guild Wars 2.
So we know that there's a new expansion coming out, but then that doesn't change anything today, right? I mean, there's nothing new in the game now.
Well, yes and no. And that's kind of what I said. Like, they're doing a really good job out of game, and they're also doing a really good job in game, which I think more games should do. Like, here's like some of the stuff that they're doing. One, they have this really weird model where they do expansions and then what they call living world seasons. Living world seasons are kind of like the intermissions between expansions, and there's story content, and there's some like maps involved, like expansion maps involved with them. But they're like, I'd call them intermissions. I think that's a really good kind of synonym for them. And if you log in when they launch, those Living World seasons are free for players. So if you Living World Season 4, Episode 5 is coming out, and during the time that it comes out, before Episode 6 comes out, if you log in, you get that episode for free, which I think is really cool. Like, if you're an active player, you get it for free. But after that is over, you have to pay the premium currency for it. So, Chris, if you didn't log in recently, you may not have Icebrewed Saga, chapter whatever, because you didn't log in during that time. You can go back and buy that stuff for premium currency. However, during this hype building phase, they're like, hey, experience the whole story, buy all the expansions in a bundle, and during the next couple of weeks, for 2 weeks, we're re-releasing one episode for free at a time. So, like, it gets you to, like, for new, it's really like hype building for new players, because in game you log in, they're enticing you to log in, they're enticing you to replay the story. And if you don't have it, you get it for free. If you do already have it, and this is like the mind-blowingly cohesive marketing unit working here, if you do already have it, or you just got it for free, there are new achievements to earn in those previously played stories that lead you toward a legendary, I think it's an amulet, a legendary item of some sort. And in Guild Wars 2, legendary is like the top level stuff, right? Like that's what everyone strives for in terms of gear. And it's not easy to come by. It's like hundreds of hours per piece. So they've just done a really nice job of bringing the story element all together.
That's really cool. Yeah, I'm glad that they're doing a good job with that. But are you doing those things? Are you going back and playing all those like living worlds that are like resurfacing and all of that?
Nope, not yet. I mean, I will,
but like it's time limited, right?
The achievements are not. So the go back and play the old story thing is not time limited.
Okay, cool. That means I have a chance at maybe trying it someday.
Yeah, and like another friend of ours and I are just like, yeah, we'll get to that eventually. Like, we'll do it together and some of the old stuff, and we don't have to do it like right now. There's no rush to do it, any of that. So that's really nice. The other piece is they are doing a really good job right now. I don't know why. I feel like they've done this in the past maybe, but it wasn't part of this cohesive marketing like machine. They're also doing a really good job of like weekly events, world boss rushes, world v world, like bonus weeks. I can't think of it. There's some others. So it's getting you to kind of log in and play for the weeks that you really care about. It's getting you to pay attention to the news. It's getting you to do all of that. And then the last piece of it I'll touch on really fast is they're adding features to the game that people have been asking for literally years. And they're coming kind of at the same time as the expansion. Again, they're using this marketing machine to like advertise that they're doing all of this amazing work that everyone's been asking for literally forever. And it's like coming as part of the hype for the expansion, but it's just coming. Like it's just part of the game, right? It's not part of the expansion. It's not going to be a paid experience. And that is the Legendary Armory came out, and that like this is the biggest one for me. Is if you get a legendary item of some sort, a sword, a piece of armor or something, you can use it across all your characters on the account rather than just the character that earned it. And that is huge for me. The account-based equipment or account-based achievements are so important to me because I don't want to do something multiple times. If you're talking about gearing a character, or you're talking about learning a class, or you're talking about like experiencing like non-story based elements of the game, like, I'm getting really good at healing, or, like that part of it, really interesting to me. I have to play this story all over again because it's required to get my character to level 80. Don't want to do that. I have to earn this armor piece again by doing a series of steps that are not related to story or anything, or like it's not related to skill. I don't want to do that. It's just a time sink. But so they've now released this Legendary Armory where if you earn it on one character, you can use it on any character that can use that piece of armor or that weapon.
Well, that's nice. Yeah, they've been going that way in World of Warcraft for a little while, where they unlock some things account wide, but there still is a frustrating level of things that they expect you to do on a per character basis. Usually what happens in WoW is that they will make something be per character, and then like 6 months to a year later, they will open it up to be account wide, which is like you say, oh, that's not so bad. But like at that point, that's just old content. So it's not as good. Like it would be nice if from the start they would do that, but then it would make it almost too easy to make a bunch of alts, I guess. Maybe that's the idea, but I still think it would be really nice. I mean, I'm at the point now in WoW where I play a single character at a time because there's just too much stuff you have to do on each character in order to stay current. And it's just not worth it time-wise to me to do that.
Yeah, that's how I was with Guild Wars too, because I was just like, I'm not going to invest in multiple characters. I don't want to do map exploration again. I don't want to go find all the waypoints again. And some of that is still character based because some of the larger achievements are like tied, like some of the economy is based on like people sinking time into that. But the idea to me is not so like off-putting for a legendary now that multiple characters would be able to use it. The last thing to note about legendary armor or weapons, if you're an MMO player, you'll understand this immediately. But in Guild Wars 2, the stats of weapons and items are very standardized. They're, you've got your plus health, your plus attack damage, plus critical chance, right? Like those are kind of like stats. They're called very cool things in Guild Wars that have really cool names, but essentially they all boil down to stats that everyone already knows in MMOs. On legendary items, it's the same stats as like the one right below it, the ascended level items. Like they're the same like values, but on ascended level stuff and exotic level stuff, those values are kind of like part of the armor itself. Like you have to go for a very specific piece of armor for a very specific stat set. On legendary, you can switch them at will. So if I want to be a DPS, like a guardian, I'm a guardian in Guild Wars 2. If I want to be a DPS guardian, if I have ascended level gear, I need 2 sets of gear, and I need to build out 2 full sets of gear. If I have legendary gear, in this build, I have the legendary select this stat, and then if I have a whole nother build, I just select different stats for my legendary armor. And I don't need 2 full sets. What that also means, if you have other characters, they're immediately geared as soon as they hit level 80. And because the stats can be selected on the legendary armor.
Oh, that's really nice.
So it becomes about exactly what I was talking about Warframe a few weeks ago, where the game at that point becomes about experiencing and learning the class and the game itself rather than like earning the gear. It becomes about the experience of playing and learning the game and getting good at your class rather than spending hours and hours and hours grinding out whatever you needed to grind in order to get to the point where you actually get to learn your class.
Nice. That's awesome.
There's probably more, but like all of that hype is what's kind of bringing me back to the game. And I will say, like, straight up, if someone asked me like, oh, you talked about all this cool stuff that they're doing, are you benefiting from literally any of it? And the answer is no. Like, I haven't touched legendary armor yet. I'm still getting like full ascended armor for one of the builds. You know, I'm not doing any of it, but all of this and plus the expansion hype, which they've done, you know, they've now done announcements. They're coming out with fishing, which if anyone knows me, they know how much I love fishing in games. You know, they're coming out with all this new story content, you know, new legendary weapons and stuff like that. You know, that on top of everything else that they're doing has just built this incredible hype that makes me want to get back in the game. And the last piece of all of this is like, I am now on this vertical grind in Guild Wars 2, which is like kind of hard to find. I think maybe Chris, that's why you and I just like have not really enjoyed Guild Wars 2 together, because Guild Wars 2 is a very horizontal game. Like there's a ton, like you hit level 80 and you're done. Like level 80 is the highest. There's no more, you know, anything to achieve in terms of level. Even when they release new expansions, like they're not adding new levels to the game.
Yeah, and you get to level 80 in like 3 days. I mean, I know it's like 2 weeks, but like it's very fast.
Yeah, it's really, really fast. The whole end game is I mean, the whole game is essentially level 80. And then as with most MMOs, right? You get to max level. You know, World of Warcraft, you essentially can't play until you're max level.
Yeah, and so, I mean, yes, World of Warcraft is one thing, but Guild Wars, it's so fast, so easy. I wonder why they even have levels.
Because for the new players, if you're learning your class, it's very important to do it slowly.
I see. I think I completely missed that entire lesson because I probably got to level 80 without truly knowing how to play my actual class. I think I just kind of grinded out to get to the, you know, max level and then expecting for things to happen once I got there. And then it was kind of just like, nope, here you are. The world is your whatever.
They don't do a very good job of saying like, oh, great, you've hit level 80. Like, look at all these things you can do now. It's not as in your face as in some other games. But the thing with level 80 is like, you can go do anything you want now, right? You can go do fractals. You can go do raids. You can go do, World v World PvP. You can do challenge mode strikes. Like there's so much things to do once you hit level 80 that like it's not about progressing vertically in a single thing. It's about progressing vertically a much shallower vertical span across lots of different things. And I have finally found like the vertical progression in fractals, and I have just broke the surface on the vertical progression in raids, which are so fun because they're hard. Like most of Guild Wars, you can beat the game, right? You can play the game by literally just button mashing all of your skills. You just, if anything's on cooldown or not on cooldown, you just hit the button again and you win eventually. Like that's most of Guild Wars. But finally you get into like high level fractals and raiding, and it is not like that anymore. You're finally to a point where you have to try with a group of 10 people or a group of 5 people, depending on what you're doing, over and over and over again to get the mechanics right, your DPS high enough, your healing just right. You have to make sure that the bomb isn't in the safe point at the same point. You have to make sure everyone does their job together. Like raids and fractals, high level fractals are where this vertical progression and learning the game and learning your class really start to matter. And that's been a lot of fun.
I mean, you just explained mechanics of raid bosses, which is a thing that like WoW has and lots of other things have. Like that's not really much of a revelation to me. It's like, that's just par for the course, right? I mean, yes, it's raids. Like it should be hard, and it's the hardest level content, right? So it should be challenging, but like, it's interesting that it takes that long. Like dungeons in World of Warcraft have some level of mechanics. I mean, usually they're not as coordinated or as involved as raids are, but like the fact that you're like, oh, I just finally found the thing that has actual mechanics in this game is surprising to me.
Well, it's partly my fault, right? I never really got into it. It's not as in your face as, say, World of Warcraft, and I would say that's probably a downside of Guild Wars 2 is it's not as accessible to newer level 80 characters. Like, you really have to, if you want to do that stuff, you really have to like go out and seek it. Like, there's an entire Discord related to Guild Wars 2 raid training because it's not something you just pug. So that's something that I've had to really put time and effort into. I need to go learn how to do this. I need to go find a group that is willing to train me, and all of that stuff. The main difference, and I think, this is where, we may differ in our what is the right way to do this. The main difference in raiding and dungeons essentially are fractals. That's kind of what they are. The main difference between the two, between World of Warcraft and Guild Wars 2, is in World of Warcraft, you are both learning the mechanics and striving for better gear, because the gear determines your DPS in most cases, right? In a lot of cases, right? And once you learn your class, which is still a little difficult to do, but once you learn it, you still have to do the treadmill of the gear every week or every whatever. You have to get better gear to get better and better DPS. In Guild Wars 2, that doesn't exist. Like I said, like the stats of the armor, the stats of your weapons max out once you hit exotic. Exotic, ascended, and legendary, all the exact same numbers on the stats. There are tiny differences that you can get with some like super expensive stuff called infusions, but like essentially no one does that unless you're super min-max, like absolutely crazy min-maxing, because the diminishing returns on that is just so high. So the whole game, the whole thing, and this is both a blessing and a curse for Guild Wars 2, is mechanics. It's mechanics of your class and mechanics of the boss.
I think that's probably where I would fall down, because I probably lean more than I should on time bringing, the rising tide, raising all boats of time in World of Warcraft, where I basically, slightly improve mechanics, but not, slightly improve mechanics in the dungeons for sure, majorly improve those. But like in terms of class rotation and things like that, I am never like spot on with my rotations, and I don't really know what I'm missing. I don't really know how to fix that. I've watched videos. I've, tried to figure things out. This is why I don't play Fire Mage in WoW. I play Frost Mage because the rotation is easier and, in my opinion, more fun. But I'm probably not the best at it anyway. And so I think that now you've hit the ceiling, all the numbers are the same, now you just have to get better. Like that, I don't know, that doesn't really appeal to me as much. Like doing hard content with people and getting better at doing that content is one thing, but like I feel like maybe the level of personal responsibility that I want to be involved in my video gaming is a little bit lower than yours. Some
classes rotations are like way easier than others. So I unfortunately, I think you chose one of the hardest classes. Like you're an engineer, and those, while easy in open world content and kind of like fun depending on what you're doing, is like a good class, they're not easy in raids and fractals. Like if you're a healer, there's like a very specific like way to do it. If you're a DPS, Hollowsmith, again, there's like a really specific rotation that like maximizes your heat or minimizes your heat production. So it's really complicated in my opinion. And I'm a guardian. I just mash buttons. Like it's not quite that easy, but most of the time my gods are like, just use this every time it's off cooldown. I was like, okay, I can do that.
That's like cheating.
Yeah, a little bit. There are some that I think are even easier than Guardian, but I don't read too much into those guides. So I would say if you are interested in like trying Guild Wars 2 again and you wanted to get into the higher level content, I would probably recommend to you to start another character, and you probably have a level 80 boost somewhere in your bank because they give them out like candy.
I mean, even if I don't, I can get to level 80 in like a week, so it's no big deal.
Yeah, that's true. And I would say choose a different class.
I would actually be more concerned, interested, whatever, about not having all my inventory and stuff between my characters, but maybe it doesn't matter. I really haven't changed my like outfit in probably several years at this point. Well, maybe I'll give that a shot. I'll take a look at something else and see if there's another. I don't want to be a guardian. I would pick something else maybe and see what else is out there.
Yeah, you could be like Necro, I think is kind of fun. Mesmers are kind of fun. Again, I don't know the rotations as well. Like you would have to do some research on like what's the easiest class in terms of rotation. Because even if they're easy, that still doesn't mean that they're like hit the one key over and over again.
Sure.
But you know, there are some that are like very specific. Like you have to use this before this, or you tank your own DPS. Like you just.
I played a Mesmer back in Guild Wars 1, so maybe that's a blast from the past I could return to.
The other thing that I would highly suggest, at least this is a mistake that, well, I wouldn't call it a mistake, but there are so many different kinds of support classes in Guild Wars 2. It's not just tank, DPS, and healer. There really isn't a tank class. Like there are in some raid fights, there is a tank, and it is whatever person has the highest toughness, which is a damage mitigation stat. But it's not like there isn't the Holy Trinity. There are healing classes, but they have, like in a lot of cases, they have something called off healing, which is like you're kind of DPS, but you also have a lot of healing skills in like your other hand, you know, because a lot of classes can weapon swap. There are what they call quickness classes, and quickness makes your attacks go faster. There is alacrity, which makes your cooldowns cool down faster. You know, just by like 10, 20, maybe 30%. I don't know the exact numbers. But like in a raid composition, you're looking for at least one healer. And if you're only bringing one healer, you want another off healer. You want an alacrity class. Typically, that's a renegade. And you want at least 2 quickness classes, because quickness only gives to 5 people and raids are 10. So like plus DPS. So you have like 4 to 5 different support classes or like people that you like, roles that you need to fill. They're not all like class specific, but 4 to 5 support classes that are all generally doing some DPS. And then you just have 5 or so straight as high as DPS as you can go people, which is kind of cool. Like, I like that. I like that it's not the Holy Trinity of tank, DPS, heals, but it also is kind of like a role specific kind of thing. So I find that very cool. And where I'm going with all of this is DPS is fun, but I would really like to learn how to do a healer, because I think one, it's much easier to build. It's much easier to get into groups when you're not just a DPS, as is true with most MMOs. And I think healing would be fun. I just think like doing something other than getting my DPS as high as possible would be kind of fun.
Yeah, healers always have it easiest because everybody needs a healer when they go to do something, so they're always looking for one. And DPS are just dime a dozen. We have the same problem in WoW all the time. And I play as DPS there as well. And it's much more difficult to get into groups when you're not playing as a tank or a healer in WoW. So maybe all right, you've convinced me to try a Mesmer, which is also DPS, but like, you know, I guess I could be a...
Well, there are other, like, again, like it's not specific to the class. So you could become a Mesmer, and I believe Mesmers, I can't remember if they do alacrity or quickness, but they do have other roles they can fill if you build to that role. But again, you know, as a player starting to get into this content, the easiest role is to just focus on DPS, because you don't have to look at anyone else's health or buffs. You just have to focus on the boss and not dying.
I like that. That sounds like my style.
All that to be said, Guild Wars 2 is really fun right now. It always has been really fun, but I have found the thing... it's really weird. Like one of our other buddies plays a lot of Guild Wars 2, and he's really the guy that got me into Guild Wars 2. But I like that I have found content in Guild Wars 2 where I can spend 3 hours doing something. It's really, really weird to say out loud, but I can spend 3 hours doing something and not succeed. I was on a raid training the other day, and in a raid wing, there are 3 to 4 bosses. And in 3 hours, we killed 1 out of the 3 bosses. And that was so cool to me. Like, it was just so fun to see that boss get to 5% and then 2%. And then finally we killed the first one. And then the second one, we got to like 30% and 20% and 10%. And then it was midnight. And I was like, gotta go to bed. It was just so cool.
That's like my favorite part of WoW raids as well. The challenge there is that you have to have a group that's willing to stick it out. And if you are, and in WoW, it's, they got the vertical progression side. So oftentimes if you're in a pickup group, they will look at the DPS meters and just be like, all right, well, we don't really care if you did, mechanics right or not. We just, are going to pick our lowest DPS and just kick them out, right? Because we'll just find better DPS, because there's always DPS that want to do this, and we'll just find better DPS. And then sometimes they'll be like, okay, well, you were pretty good DPS in the previous attempts, and then you had bad luck one time and you got hit by a mechanic you shouldn't have, and then they're just going to kick you. And so that's like the interpersonal dynamics, I guess, of raiding and not having a group, like a dedicated group, that really is frustrating. But in a smaller, like a 10-person content, then it's probably easier to kind of get a group together. I mean, you can do raids in WoW with 10 people, but usually they're closer to 20, 15, 20. And so it's just, if you don't have a proper group, like a guild or something that you're going to run with all the time, like that's my favorite part about doing World of Warcraft. Was I used to play in a guild where we would have raid night. Tuesday was raid night, and I think Sundays or something like that. And so we would all, get in Discord, or at the time TeamSpeak or Ventrilo or something, and play and try to get these bosses down. And you would, sometimes you would fail. Like you would try a bunch and then you'd fail, and you would either realize, okay, the group is tired, we're not really getting anywhere, let's just call it and we'll come back next time. Or you'd say, okay, yeah, we don't have the right composition. Some people would swap over to some alts and we would try it differently. Or, oh yeah, we don't have the right tactics. Let's, somebody's going to explain this. Oh, we need to go find some more pugs because somebody had to go, or whatever. Like, it was just an interesting community as part of that whole thing. And I haven't had that for a long time in World of Warcraft, because I've been kind of playing the pug life, and to me that's much less fun. I have a group of friends. We have 5 people right now, actually, so we have a full dungeon team, which is cool. But our schedules are all off, and it's really difficult. We can't just set a night and do it. Whereas when you have a guild of 50 people, you can probably scrounge up 15 of them at a time on a scheduled raid night. So it's definitely a different feel. But I know exactly where you're coming from with, like, it's exciting to try something, do it again, and then do better, or do worse and say what went wrong. And then everybody, rushes back and like, all right, guys, let's reset real quick. Let's try it again. We know what we're going to do. We're not going to do that again, and go from there. So like those attempts, I totally understand what you're talking about. And those are really fun. It's just very difficult to do if you don't, and in World of Warcraft, at least, it's difficult to do that if you don't have a set group, because people have no patience on the internet for strangers.
Yeah. Well, okay. So, but I think it's exaggerated by World of Warcraft from some of the mechanics, because there's no one else that I personally know that does raiding in Guild Wars 2. So I play with strangers on the internet for raiding in Guild Wars 2 by like joining a public Discord channel. And whenever there's a post about, hey, we're doing a training, or we're doing they call them progression runs, where you're not like quite sure that you know the mechanics perfectly, but like you're learning, and you shouldn't expect a boss kill, but you'll probably get one. And the thing, like you said, like they'll just kick the lowest DPS. Then one of the nice things about Guild Wars 2 is, yes, DPS is important, but I explain it like this. If you do every mechanic in Guild Wars 2 perfectly, you will take next to no damage. There are not heal checks. The only reason healers exist is because people make mistakes. And sometimes there are too many mechanics to do all at once in order to give the healers something to do. But it is, in theory, possible to do every mechanic perfectly and never take any damage in most scenarios. A lot of times, you straight up ignore mechanics because your healing bar is so high, you just heal through certain things. Like there are certain bosses where like, hey, we're just not going to stand in that green circle over there, which is going to prevent a bunch of damage from happening to us. We're just going to heal through it because we know we can. And that's a cool decision to make, because sometimes you're just like, no, we can't heal through it. So now we actually have to do that mechanic, which makes the thing a little harder. But where I'm going with this is because like there typically aren't heal checks or DPS checks or whatever. The only thing that DPS does is makes the fight easier. Higher DPS makes the fight easier because you have to do the mechanics for less time. So in these training groups, in these raiding groups, in these, these groups of people, everyone's super nice because it's all about like learning the mechanics. And we're kind of all doing it together. But if there's a really low DPS on the charts, we might be like, hey, maybe work on your DPS for next time, but we're not going to kick them from the group because all it's going to do is make the fight last 15 seconds longer or 30 seconds longer, which could be 2 or 3 or 4 more mechanics that we would have to dodge and be prepared for. But in the end, we're not going to lose the fight because our DPS is too low. Now, really hardcore Guild Wars players, if you're out there, I doubt that you're listening, but there are some DPS check bosses. There are a few out there in raiding, but most of them are not. Anyway, we've been talking about Guild Wars for a long, long time. That goes all I really want to kind of wrap it up with is it is really fun. It was in our free to play episode. It is free to play for the core game. And I highly encourage people, if they've never played Guild Wars 2, it is a different MMO. It is much more like action combat oriented, not tab targeted. There still are targeted enemies, but it's just a different kind of thing. You can dodge roll, and it's a lot more about being in the right position. It's a lot more about mechanics than it is about gear. So if that's something you're interested in, I'm playing. Shoot me a note, and try it out. It's free. Chris, I've been talking for much longer than I expected. I'm a little passionate about Guild Wars, but it's time for me to flip the tables on you, because again, we've been talking about a lot of different stuff on the show, but we really haven't been talking about what we've been playing lately. And you've got kind of, I won't call it an obsession, but you've got a main game going on right now.
Yes, I do. It's not an obsession because I pick it up and put it down probably once a week or so. But I've got, as I mentioned in a post show a few episodes ago, I picked up Returnal for the PS5. And that's been a lot of fun. It's a roguelike. It's a shooter. It's a PS5 exclusive. And I've been playing quite a bit of it. I think I've played probably, 6-8 hours of it so far. And it's been a lot of fun.
So I've watched you play this as streaming, like the super convoluted PlayStation in another room, stream to your computer, and then stream over Discord to allow me to watch. And I've got to say, it looks like really like polished for a third person shooter. Like it looks really like the gameplay is really cool.
Yeah, they have it's a third person shooter, like you said, and you have a jump and a dash, and you have a melee, and you have a gun. You have one gun. There's no switching guns, just one gun. Well, you can pick up a new gun, but then that is your gun, right? You don't get to have like an offhand or like a sidearm or whatever. It's just, this is your one weapon right now, and you can change it for a different weapon. But if you do that, you lose the first one. But yes, it has a jump and a dash, and it has enemies that shoot kind of slow moving projectiles towards you for the most part, although some of them are deceptively fast, I would say. And you can use your dash, and you have a bit of an invincibility frame, which allows you to, do the dodge at the last possible second from this bullet mechanic, which I rely on probably much more than I should. But that's really nice to be able to just kind of be like, oh yeah, this thing is coming at me, I'm going to dash through it. And that's necessary in some cases, right? Because they send, big giant waves that are like filling the entire screen, and you're like, oh my gosh, what do I do? But yeah, it's a really fun game, and it's a very smooth and very polished experience. And for the longest time, probably my first 25 runs, I was pretty sure I would never get out of the first biome because it was that hard.
Yeah, and that's what I've heard about the game is that, I don't have a PS5, but I have watched some people play it other than you, and That tends to be the thing that everyone says is like, oh, this is tough.
Yeah, but the thing about it is that it is very good at knowing that what you want to do when you die is get right back into this game. Like, there is story, and it's in the form of audio logs that are ostensibly left by you, because it's you're seeing your own body, basically your own dead body you find, and you're like, oh, here's an audio log from me describing what I have seen on this world or whatever. And that's how they do some amount of story. But like, other than that, there's no like hub world like Hades. There's no like, go pick up a bunch of story from a bunch of random people. It's like, okay, you died. Great. We're going to show you some really random, really weird, like creepy pictures in like a weird way. And then you wake up and you're in the next run and you're going again. And so it's just like the time between I died and I'm playing again is like, I don't know, 5 seconds.
Wow.
Which is really nice for a roguelike. It's like, yeah, we understand that you don't probably want to look at a continue screen and choose yes or no. You just want to get back in and play the game. And that's what they do. And so you get right back in it and you try again. And it's really lowered the penalty for failure in my mind, I guess. Like, I don't find myself being like, oh my gosh, I'm so disappointed that I got so far and then I died and this is terrible. Like, I'm just like, all right, great, let's do it again. Let's get the next one. And that is a different feel than a lot of roguelikes, because like, yes, in all of them, you're expected to fail in some level, but this one, it just seems to be so baked in.
You mentioned that the game is split into like biomes, right? They're kind of like levels or like grant, I don't know, whatever. They're the where you move from one section to the other. You've gotten past the first one now. Can you consistently get past the first one every run now?
Haha. So that is my favorite part of this game. Most of these, like Hades, right? You have to beat the first level in order to get to the second level, right? The first biome, the first area, whatever you want to call it. You have to do that fight every single time you play Hades, right? You're going to go through, 10 rooms, and then you're going to get to the boss, and you're going to do the boss. Then you get to the next one, and then you have to fight the Hydra, right? And then you do the next bunch, and then you got to fight the Minotaur, whatever. Sorry, spoilers for Hades. And so in this one, I found the hard boss, right? The first like biomes boss after probably, like I said, 10, maybe 15 runs. I finally got to this massive door that's like, with all these crazy interlocks, and this rolls away, and it's just like crazy elaborate. And I was like, oh, I bet you this is the boss. And it was. And I tried to fight it, and I failed, I think probably 2 or 3 times, like 2 or 3 runs. And eventually I finally beat it. And I was like, oh my gosh, yes, this is great. Now, hopefully I'll have something that will allow me to be a little stronger next time so that I will do better at this thing and all of that as I head on to the second biome, because I'm like, oh, it's going to be really painful to do that again because it was very hard. This game, Returnal, when you have finished the boss for the first biome, if you can find the gate to the second biome, which is what you need anyway, you just go through it. Like, it's just activated now. So every run subsequently, I don't have to do that first world boss if I don't want to. Now, I can still choose to go there and fight that thing because it can give you different unlocks and different artifacts and things that are good for the rest of your run, which can help you. So like one time I was playing earlier today, actually, and I had a gun that was really good. And I was like, you know what? My gun is good enough. I think I can do this. I think I can beat that first boss. I'm going to give it a try. So I did. And I beat it, but with like no health at all, basically. But that was okay, because then I went on to the second biome, and then there was a bunch of health that I was able to pick up, and then I died within 2 minutes. But I had decided, whereas previously I had decided, okay, I'm never doing that again. I was like, okay, I think at this point I am strong enough that I can probably take this on one more time. And I did it, and I tried it, and maybe next time I'll try again. It was a real confidence booster there, but also I know I don't have to do that first boss again if I don't want to.
Yeah, that's a nice mechanic. I'm kind of confused as to how they work that into the story of the time loop, but that's a cool way of doing it. It's a nice way of like saying like, congratulations. And also, if you want to do it again, but also we want you to experience the rest of the game.
Yeah, the time loop thing is interesting because there's a few traits, I guess, or things that you get that are permanent across runs, right? So when I started the game, I didn't have a melee at all. And at some point after doing either some number of runs or finding some room by happenstance, I really don't know what the criteria was, but I found the sword. And now every time I start a new run, I have the sword. Like, I don't have to go find the sword again. So that it's loosely a time loop thing where some things will follow you across runs. And I'm wondering, as I progress in the game and the story becomes slightly more clear, if it will become more obvious what's going on and why you keep some of those things across time loops. Like, I feel like they probably have a description for this or like a reasoning, but I haven't figured out what it is yet.
So how far have you gotten in the second biome? And do you think you'll ever get to the end of this game, or is it just too brutal?
Oh, I think I'll get to the end of the game. I do believe that I will finish it. I have gotten all the way to the boss in the second biome, assuming that there's only one. I don't really know. But I have gotten to the boss in the second biome. It's this flying guy. He's kind of a pain. I actually thought I was going to beat him the first time I saw him, but then I did not. And because that one makes heavy use of dashing and jumping and dashing and all that, which is pretty easy to me, I think. It's just when you have a lot of like bullets coming at you and you have to manage two things at once. Like the first boss, one of the big challenges was that usually you keep him at a distance, and you kind of just run around him in a circle and you shoot at him. But sometimes he closes the distance and tries to take a melee swipe at you. And at that point, you have to also dash out of the way. And I wasn't paying close enough attention, or I'm not always on top of it enough to see the telegraphing of the moves. Like, he's doing something that telegraphs the moves, but sometimes I get a little tunnel vision on the shooting part and I miss the, part of it that is the, you should move now, please. And so I just get smacked by this boss. But the second one felt a little bit easier. I now just haven't been able to get back to that second boss yet, because the thing is, with this unlock the second biome straight from the beginning, like if you find the gate, you can't go back to the first biome once you go to the second one. So there's kind of this balance that you want to go collect a bunch of stuff. You want to kind of build up your character for that run. And then you want to go to the second biome. So there's this risk reward like trade-off thing that you go through in order to kind of see, do I want to spend more time doing this, or do I want to, go straight to the second biome and see what I find there? Like, because there's like a little currency similar to Hades where there's like, money that you only keep in that run that doesn't translate over. But there's also this currency that translates between runs, which you use to unlock new types of artifacts that you can find in subsequent runs, which allows you to, be more powerful in later runs and things like that. So it's all kind of a trade-off, like these roguelike games always are. There's always this kind of back and forth between, do I want to spend more time doing this? Do I want to spend more time, moving forward? And it's a little bit of a give and take.
Yeah, that's a huge decision in Risk of Rain 2. That is always like a big, especially between you and I, because I'm always like, go, let's go. And you're like, no, I want to build up more. And, it's this really fine-tuned balance. Risk of Rain adds to that complexity in that it gets harder by the second that passes, right? Like every second matters. Whereas in this one, it's can I effectively, fight or kill without taking damage? But both of those are equally like, do I want to spend more time here, or do I want to just move forward? And I can understand how hard that decision is every single run, because every single run is a different set of circumstances.
Exactly.
How would you say, so this game is procedurally generated, right? The map, the tiling, and all of that. How would you say that impacts the game? Is that like something that you like? Does it not really matter? Would you prefer like a static, like really well-built map? Because I would say Hades is kind of like in the middle, but like there's some procedural elements of it, but it's generally the same, like one after another. Whereas something like Returnal or what's another really great, or like Dungeon of the Endless, right? Those are roguelikes or roguelites that are procedurally generated. Where does this fall, and what do you think of it?
This one, Returnal, is a like tile set based. So there are rooms that have the same layout. Like I can enter a room and recognize it as, okay, I've been here before. I know that there's, 2 doors or whatever. I know that this one has the in-level teleporters that will take you from like a lower level to an upper level, like almost like an elevator. Those kinds of like layouts are the same, but the order in which you encounter them is different. So it's basically they just build the little building blocks of the different rooms onto each other in a given biome. And that is how I interpret it. And I think that's okay. Like, I don't know that I have a huge opinion on most of those rooms, but it does make it easy to understand. Like the room that goes into that first level boss, right? The boss of the first biome, it's always the same. It's like a chain of like 3 rooms, and there's like this giant staircase, and like you go down this big hole, and that's where the fight is. And so like those sequences of events are always the same through, like, regardless. But the door like that goes into that sequence might be in a completely different place each run, and that's okay. I don't mind that. It gives a little bit of variety without being like totally, we procedurally generated this, and now there's no doors in this chamber, and you're just done with your run because you got unlucky.
Yeah, or we haven't tested this scenario and the boss clips through the wall.
Yeah, exactly. Those kinds of things could happen, and that makes the game very unfun immediately. So like if you have something that is completely procedurally generated, there's a risk that you end up in those situations. If you don't have very good like checking code, there's a risk that you end up with situations where things are just like completely, unrealistic or unwinnable even. And you could chalk it up to say, oh, well, sorry, that's just how it goes. These roguelike games, they're just really hard. But like that would take you out of it.
Yeah. This reminds me a lot of how Warframe does it, right? Like essentially everything is tiled, but certain very special rooms are tiled at a certain point, and everything is generally recognizable, but how they all fit together is the procedural part. And I tend to like it a lot in Warframe.
Yeah, it's exactly like that is in Warframe, I would say. They also have a really cool 3D map. So there's also teleportation paths, which is another one of those things that I unlocked in some run, and now it's available in all the runs. So surprisingly, for a game like this, they actually have in-level teleportation where you can teleport back a few rooms, forward a few rooms, that kind of thing. And when I'm really trying to like scavenge before I go do a boss, or I'm scavenging before I go to the next biome, I use those all the time. Like in each level, there seems to be like a shop, and the shop always seems to have one of these teleportation pads in it. And so I'm always going back and forth like, okay, great, there's a shop here. When I get more money, I'll come back to the shop. And the nice thing is I don't have to run back through all the rooms because there's no enemies. Like the rooms spawn the enemies one time, and then the rooms don't spawn the enemies as you walk through them again. So there's really no reason to go back through them other than just, taking up time doing this traversal. So they give you this fast travel thing, which is really nice as a way to just skip back to a thing that you've already seen in this run. The other thing I would say about this game is that it's very pretty because it's a PS5 game, of course. And it has a lot of particle effects. It has a lot of atmospheric effects. I've played it both, as Jason mentioned, on the like PS Remote Play app into my computer, as well as actually on a real TV. Obviously, it looks better on the TV, but it doesn't look too bad on the remote stream. And I don't have that bad of an input lag. Like it's playable, I would say, in the same house, all on wired internet, of course.
Is it noticeable?
I would say not really. Like it's pretty good.
Because there's a huge difference between the input lag is reasonable and the input lag is noticeable, and the input lag is neither. Like there's a huge difference between those three things.
Yeah, I would say that this input lag, as far as I can tell, is non-existent. Like I don't know what the ping is in my house between two things on wired network, but it's probably sub 10 milliseconds, which is probably not that much different than my like TV is with all of its crazy processing stuff. So that's fine. One thing I have noticed, which might be related to I was playing on the TV, which is the first time I'd really played with speakers in a while. And, the PlayStation controller has a speaker in it. So then, they add little sound effects and stuff. So whenever you had like your alt fire would recharge, it makes a little doodle-doo or whatever. And when it does that, if you're playing with headphones, it does that in the headphones, right? It does it in the mix because whenever you're wearing headphones or if you're streaming, it doesn't use a speaker in the controller. Okay, fine. That makes sense. But then today I was playing with the speakers on the TV, and it still makes that beep in the speakers on the TV, but it also makes that beep on the speakers on the controller. And the controller one is like a half second before the one on the TV.
Oh, weird.
And I'm trying to figure out, I'm like, oh, does this mean that there's a half second of lag? Maybe it's not a half second, but, some noticeable amount of lag between what the PlayStation is sending and what I'm seeing on the TV, or what I'm hearing. Maybe the sound is a little bit off. So I haven't really investigated that, but that is something that's kind of in the back of my head now is like, am I constantly playing with this lag, and would I do better if I, had less input lag, blah, 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 which is probably not true because I'm probably not that good. So, a few milliseconds is not going to make or break me.
Well, a few milliseconds, no, but if it's a noticeable sound difference, it might be there. I mean, some TVs have like really bad input lag and really long processing times. I'm talking like, up to a half a second. So you might find it a little snappier. You should investigate. I mean, I'm sure your TV has some kind of like game setting or something where it tries to get the input lag and processing time as low as possible. And if you're not on that, I would try that.
Yeah, it may also have to do with my Sonos soundbar because I have tweaked the input delay for that a little bit to try to make the lip sync work on TV shows and stuff. And I can never really tell if I'm making it better or worse. Well, I've gotten it now to a point where I'm satisfied with it, but it's difficult now because if you tweak it a little bit, you're like, did that make it better or did that make it worse? I don't really know. So it might be the sound.
Have you ever played any rhythm games on this TV with this setup?
Not in a long time. Like I have a PS3 Rock Band and I haven't played it on that TV, I don't believe.
Because it would become immediately obvious if you played a rhythm game.
Yeah, I just don't have any rhythm games for the PlayStation, like the PS5 or the PS4.
Yeah, a good one hasn't come out in a while, but
they stopped making good DDR games with like the PS1. So if they made one, I'd probably buy it. So I would estimate that I'm probably halfway through Returnal. I hope. I don't really know. So I guess when I beat it, then we can revisit and see how the end of the game went. There are still a few things that I've noticed that I can't do yet. Like there are unattainable platforms that have this little orange light on them that seems to be something that I'll get a grappling hook or something to be able to get across and over to. So I'm really just waiting for that to happen. We'll see kind of how that all goes. I'm enjoying it so far, and I think I'm going to continue to enjoy it. And it's really nice because it's bite-sized. You can pick it up, you can play around, and then you can just put it down. And you don't have to worry about like menus and like this game doesn't even have a title menu when you load back into it. It's just really straight into the game. If anybody out there is also playing Returnal and has any tips or hints, I would welcome those. You can send them my way. You can visit us at discord.pnapodcast.com. There we've got a nice chat channel where you can reach out and let us know how I'm doing everything wrong.
I'd also be interested to know what everyone else is primarily playing right now. Let us know. And, let us know if you're obsessing over it and why, and if there's any hype around it. I'd be really interested to hear all of that. If you have other comments or feedback for us, or you'd like to read our show notes or listen to some of our older episodes, you can visit us at pnapodcast.com. That's P, the letter N, the letter A, podcast.com.
If you've enjoyed the show, we just ask that you would share it with anyone you might know that might enjoy it.
Thanks for listening, everyone. We'll see you next time. I just got an email from HBO that said, don't miss your shot. See the slam dunk of the summer before it's too late. Space Jam: A New Legacy is now in theaters and streaming on HBO Max until August 15th.
Oh, man. I haven't watched it yet.
I didn't realize it was such a limited release on HBO Max.
Yeah, so their deal with the HBO Max same as theaters thing is that they put it on HBO Max for 30 days and then they take it off HBO Max, then they put it onto like iTunes and pay-per-view and airplanes and stuff. And then in like 30 more or 60 more days, then it'll come back to HBO.
Oh, whoa, that's okay. All right. That's,
Yeah, it's a weird business model, especially because it eventually ends up back there. Like there was something I missed in like February and it's already back on HBO. So you can watch it.
That's very strange. I mean, I get it. Like I get why, but
I think that the way that they should do it is they should have basically the theatrical release, wait 2 weeks, put it on HBO Max for 2 or 4 weeks, then do what they're doing. Like if they want HBO Max to be the value add, then put it out in theaters on day 1, put it out in streaming on day 15, and then put it out, take it off streaming and put it onto on demand on day 30 or whatever, and then put it back on streaming at day 60.
Why not put the on-demand second? Why not do theaters, then on-demand, then HBO Max?
I don't know. I guess they try to create this weird exclusivity. Because like if you do the HBO Max and then take it away, then the people that were really slow like have to buy it.
Oh, it's like artificial supply shortage. Yeah.
Yeah, it's total artificial scarcity.
After you've built the demand, theoretically. All right, I guess.
Yeah, and if you shortened the window that it's on HBO, then I don't know, it could be good.
There's a really good conversation about all of this happening right now, and I am basking in the it's just the glorious conversation of like a lot of podcasts right now, and I'm really enjoying what's being talked about, because I think there's just this huge shakeup in like how streaming first run movies kind of fits into the whole ecosystem, and it's just a really interesting thing to hear, and it's a really interesting thing to be a part of as it's happening, because in 10 years, I think we'll have it on lockdown and it'll just be the way things are. But right now we're figuring it out.
Yeah, I'm very excited. I'm really hoping that NBC can do a better job with the Olympics next time, which is in, 8 months. But I just want to be able to, if I am a Peacock subscriber, which I'm not, but I would be, I want to be able to log into Peacock or whatever and just like see a massive list of sports and just click a button and watch whatever I want. I would even pay more for no ads or limited ads or whatever. Like, come on.